What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Abdullah here, coming at you with another video for the channel, and welcome back to the DMV Sports Zone. And in today, guys, we have a very special guest, host of the Hoffman Show on Team 980 and Take Command podcast, Craig Hoffman. Craig, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, Abdullah. Appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, of course, of course. Let's dive right in, man. Let's talk about this team in Washington, the Commanders, the cute quarterback situation. Carson is now out for 4 to 6 weeks. How will the Commanders' offense be different with Taylor Heineke?
It's a good question. It's one that Logan, Paulson, and I have spent a lot of time discussing, as you know, on our podcast. And the answer is tricky because one of the things that's been said recently about this offense that really stuck with Logan and has stuck with me as well is that when Ryan Fitzpatrick said is a plug and play offense, where Scott Turner actually doesn't do a lot of forming to his quarterback, forming to his talent. He just kind of the offense as it's originally designed on paper. And so in that way, it probably won't look a lot different. Obviously, the players also have a major say. And I think what you'll see is a more efficient offense, whether they can create the big plays and ultimately score and how they perform in the red zone and some of the areas where they actually have been okay this year. I think some of those areas decline with Taylor Heineke at quarterback because of the arm strength and all the obvious reasons. But I think down in, down out, Taylor will make decisions a little bit faster. He will read the correct, route combinations more often. Often the way these plays are run, you have like a man, if it's man to man, you should look to the right and read that route combination. If it's zone, you should look to the left or vice versa. And Carson has often misidentified the coverage and not read the correct side of the formation or just forgotten which side he's supposed to be reading. And I think Taylor has a deeper understanding of the offense, and thus you'll see a little bit more efficiency out of this Commanders team. But it's really hard to go on 15 play drives and score in this league on a consistent basis. And so I don't know from a point total standpoint how much different it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So, do you think they made the right move choosing Heineke over Howell as QB1? Because my personal take is what I think Coach Ron's going to do is you start Taylor, and then when you're finally eliminated, you put Sam Howell in the mix.
Yeah, I think they did. I mean, Sam was a fifth round pick for a reason. He's a really talented player. People forget, or people might have just not been paying attention, but going into last college football season, Sam Howell was in the mix for the #1 overall pick. That's how talented he was. He was coming off a season where he had incredible numbers, but he also had a couple of NFL weapons, including De'Ami Brown, by the way, at North Carolina, as surrounding him at the skill positions. His senior year, all those guys left. He's on his own, and he was good, but he wasn't nearly the player he was when he was surrounded by all that talent in a pretty talent depleted conference in the ACC outside of Clemson. So sorry, I, as a Syracuse alum, you at Virginia Tech, like it's not
Definitely
personal.
agree,
It just
yeah.
it just is what it is, man. Although, hey, go Orange, we're 6-0. Anyway, the point is that Howell has got a long way to go in order to read an NFL defense at the speed you have to make the decisions and then ultimately execute the throws. Like he's just not there yet by all accounts. And so until he's ready, throwing him out there doesn't really do a lot. And like, he doesn't have to be ready to go win games. It's not like you're waiting for him to be ready to go out and like win a Super Bowl because we don't know that Sam Howell's ever going to be at that level. But can he go out there and not be so overwhelmed that he just gets hit and shut down and mentally like loses all confidence? So once he can get to the level that he is able to execute the offense with some level of confidence, even if it doesn't always go great, that's, I think, when you go out there. Also, obviously, like you said, the record and everything else, Heineke gives you the better chance to win right now. Once they're eliminated, if Howell's ready, I think you probably throw him out there.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about Scott Turner, and it seems as if every week all the fans complain about him after every Sunday. Do you think his predictable play calling will eventually get better down the stretch of the season, or is it just going to be consistently bad?
No, he's like Abdullah. I don't like. I'm not one of these guys who just like lives to go on sports radio and just crush guys because that's like their job is really hard.
Yeah.
Logan and I sit around in front of microphones and you guys do the show and everyone can sit on their couch and be like, well, I would have done this, knowing what the result of the play is and not being under a play clock and all this kind of stuff. But that's also the job. So I'm not, in saying what I'm about to say, I'm not telling Scott Turner that I could do it. I'm not saying that I could do it better because I know better than that. I can't. But he's not good at it. He's just not a good NFL offensive coordinator. That doesn't mean he's dumb. It doesn't mean he doesn't know football. But when it comes to the ability to maximize his players' skill sets by custom fitting a game plan based off a set of principles that is your offense. He does not do it. And he just is like, this is the way this offense was taught to me in a book at some point, and I'm just going to run it like it is in the book. And it doesn't take into account, I mean, it takes into account the defense by nature, that the defense and like how you're supposed to react to certain things is in the book, but it doesn't necessarily take into account specific weaknesses of a defense. Certainly does not take into account specific strengths of your offense. I think there was some of that week 1 against Jacksonville, but it's like they took all summer to come up with 7 plays that were cool, or not even cool, that were really productive and unique. And since then, it hasn't really shown itself again. And it's unfortunate. And I would be curious to talk to Scott. He's never going to give this away on the record of like, well, could Carson not handle it? Like, what's the problem here? You know, was it the players, or was it you not thinking it? I would be curious to know why, because I don't think he's, again, like, I don't think he's a dumb guy, but he said enough stuff where I'm just like, you seem inflexible in areas where you need to be flexible. And I know enough about the NFL to say that that's a problem. So no, to answer your question in short, after that very long answer, no, I don't think it will particularly get better.
Yeah, I definitely agree, sadly. So thoughts on the defensive line, and when do you think Chase Young will come back? And when he comes back, how much of a spark will he provide for this defense?
That is a great question, that second part, because the idea that Chase Young is going to just come back and be rookie of the year Chase Young is not realistic. I don't know if you know this, but I'm guessing most people in your audience don't, but like, I work in the fitness world as well, and do a fitness podcast. And my co-host is one of the foremost ACL specialists in the country in terms of the rehab process. And Chris and I have talked about this. Chris Gores is his name. And he and I have talked about this quite a bit, how when you're coming off of an injury like an ACL, and specifically when you're coming off an ACL, your consistency is actually what is not going to be there. So there could be a day when Chase comes back, and I'll get to the when in a second, but like when Chase comes back and he wakes up feeling great and he's like, let's go. And if that day is a Sunday, he could go out and have a 3-sack game and look like rookie of the year Chase Young, and everyone thinks he's back. And then the next Sunday, he could wake up and his knee feels stiff and it just like isn't responding well, because it's still, he's still working through scar tissue, and he's still working through, getting his full complement of strength back and his full conditioning back. And he's looks really ineffective, and they've been better off giving those snaps to James Smith-Williams, Casey Toohill, F.A. Obata, and on down the list. That is the nature of injury recovery. And until he gets his conditioning back, I think the best play for them is to use him selectively. Like, he's not a situation, like, you could use him as a situational pass rusher to get started, because he is your best pass rusher. Obviously, he's also excellent in other situations, but I would just be smart on making sure that you manage his reps, especially since Toohill and James Smith-Williams have played so well. As for when, I'm still not 100% sure he comes back this year. If they're so out of it that it doesn't make sense, like, why would you risk it? So I think that the next couple of weeks are big. I think that Ron Rivera said earlier this week that there is a doctor's appointment that will determine a lot this week in terms of when he gets cleared. And then they can start that clock. And then once he starts practicing, he's got 3 weeks until he's got to be back on the field or put on IR for the year. So I would assume that he probably comes back like within the next month. That would be almost a full year, which is kind of the back end of the timeline. His injury was really bad. He actually had multiple structural issues that had to be recovered. And the way they did the surgery, not to get too bogged down in the details, but like, he had to rehab both legs because of the surgery that he had. And so it's almost like a 12-month minimum, which I know is weird, because people are like, but Adrian Peterson did it in 6. Well, Adrian Peterson's an alien from outer space. And I mean that as a compliment. And so, trying to put Chase on that timeline is not fair. The defensive line, though, has been playing well. Smith-Williams and Toohill have been really good at just doing their jobs. And they've also made some plays. Like, James is knocked down at the goal line on second down against the Bears is a monster play. Casey's had a bunch of huge pressures, and like, plays get made downfield, big pass breakups, whatever. And it's because Toohill's the one that has the pressure. So they've both played really well. And I think those first rounders are playing well enough where they're not like great down in, down out. They've been pretty good down in, down out, especially Allen and Payne. Sweat's obviously heated up a little bit as a pass rusher of late. But I think what's really important to note about their games is that it's really hard. Like I was saying earlier with the offense, right? It's hard to put together 15 play drives in the NFL and score without some kind of big play. And if you can get a team like behind the chains, if you can get one big tackle for loss, one big sack, it tends to wreck drives. And they've been producing those consistently enough that even if they give up a couple of first downs, Allen will go get a sack. Payne will go get a sack. Sweat will go get a tackle for loss, and it sets the opposing offense back so that the defense can kind of get its feet back underneath them and recover. And that's been really impressive to watch. Those guys make big plays consistently enough that it keeps the point production for opposing offenses down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the defensive line, especially for the past 2 weeks, been balling. But going back to Chase, I think one thing that I'm scared about is that when he comes back, a lot of fans will be impatient and their productivity won't be there as soon as he comes back. So I don't know. A lot of people are still writing him off, saying, "Why do we take him at pick number 2?" And obviously, hindsight 2020, yeah, Justin Herbert, but
Yeah.
the fans here in Washington.
Yeah, I mean, look, in hindsight, you take Herbert because Herbert's awesome and he's a quarterback, and your quarterback situation's a mess, and has been for ever. But like you said, hopefully people watching this now have a better understanding, though. Like, all you can do in that situation is just tell people the truth, and the truth is, it's not going to be A+ Chase Young from go, but he's still got a lot of talent, and hopefully he can make good on that over the course of time.
Mm-hmm. So now let's transition from the Commanders to the man who always has a spotlight on him, Dan the Man Schneider. Craig, I mean, what are your thoughts on all this news involving Dan? I mean, when Jim Irsay is the first owner to condemn you in public, that's got to mean something. Is he ever going to sell?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, they pay me for, to do this for 3 hours a day on the radio. So I'll try to condense this down into the 90-second version of the answer. But I do think other owners speaking out is really important. First, anonymously in the ESPN story, and then Irsay coming out publicly. Like, clearly the league is fed up. And I do think, like, Matt Schaub speaking up yesterday as a former player, like, if current players start speaking up, because I think that would open the door for sponsors to start speaking up and, like, money talks. I appreciated Irsay yesterday saying it's not about the money. It's about what happened and how many people got hurt at his workplace. And if that was one of my daughters or my granddaughters, like, that's just a no-go. We can't have that in this league. And what I do think, not to be super cynical about it, but realistically, when you're talking about a bunch of billionaires, money talks. Like, the NFL is also starting to realize that Dan Snyder's bad for business. He's been bad for business in a long time because he's incompetent. He's bad at owning the team. And so the fan base is deteriorated and they've made a bunch of stupid business decisions. But now he's, like, actively hurting the brand. And when you hurt the shield will stand up. And so I do think that eventually, like, there will be some conclusion here to this. I think the Mary Jo White investigation, where they will find something bad that Dan did personally, could be the excuse they've been looking for. I think the stadium could be, like, there's a lot of exit ramps here. I just kind of wish they choose one. It feels inevitable at this point. And then, like, they're scared. I know he'll try to sue, but, like, at the end of the day, these types of lawsuits don't get very far. If you're a part of a conglomerate of some kind, so in his case, the NFL and ownership, and in his ownership agreement is, if 24 other owners vote you out, you have to go. And even though that's never actually been done by the league, and I don't think Snyder, like, I think Snyder will make them take the vote. He's not going to have a legal case. Like, he signed the agreement. That is the end of the road for him. It's just a matter of how quickly that lawsuit gets dismissed, and then how the sale would ultimately process. So, and how much control Dan has too. Like, does he try to pull some kind of funny trick? Like, I think that we're still a long way from the end here, but I do think that the end, like, that light way out there that you see, that is not a train coming to run us over. I do think that is the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, us fans have been calling it for so long, and it's sad because when Al Michaels is literally telling the man to
Yeah.
sell the team on television, it's got to mean something.
Yeah.
It's
Al
it's
Michaels is very plugged in. Like, Al Michaels and Roger Goodell are buddies. Al Michaels and other owners are buddies. Al Michaels been calling games longer than you've been alive. Frankly, probably longer than since then I've been alive. And that dude knows some stuff. So that was not nothing.
yeah, I agree. And all right, enough about Dan. We can talk about hours about Dan Schneider and how terrible of owner he is, but we're going to talk about the Commanders. So going back to them transitioning, if they miss the playoffs, do you think they're going to clean house?
Um, I don't have a great answer for this because I think it depends on the ownership situation. Like
Mm,
who's getting to make that call. If they, can Dan really afford to fire a coach in the middle of this? Who runs the search? Is like Jason Wright in charge? Like I don't know. I think there are just too many variables. I think they should. I don't think Ron Rivera is a above average NFL head coach. I think if Ron doesn't get fired because of the ownership stuff, I do think he makes a change on the offensive staff. I would answer it that way. And I think I don't think Jack wants to be here past this year. So I do think you'd be looking at two new coordinators next year. And when you hire two new coordinators, every assistant is on the chopping block potentially.
so do you think Jack doesn't want to be here, or we don't want him to be here?
Yes. I mean, he's, I think it's like I don't get the sense that um, he loves necessarily like the pressure of like the market, right? Like, I don't know that he thinks like he's psyched to be in Washington D.C. in this place that clearly most of the people here disagree with, like how he views the world. Not to like dive too deep down the political spectrum, but like it's a very progressive area, and
Mm-hmm.
he said what he said. So I think that that's probably part of it. Like, I think that the pieces and like the control element of like how he gets to actually put the pieces together on the field. I think there's probably some tension there between he and Ron. Like, I get the sense that like Jamin was Ron's guy and not necessarily Jack's guy. So like, I think there's some tension there in terms of just like, hey man, now everyone thinks I suck. Although he's, defense has been a lot better recently, but like now everyone thinks I suck. And it's because you drafted a linebacker in the first round who played 10 college games. So I'm not doing this anymore. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of where I sit on it.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. Well, thanks again, Craig, for taking your time. Before we head out, can you please plug in your podcast rather?
I would love to. The Take Command podcast is out 3 times a week. It is on anywhere that you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, also the always free Odyssey app. Corporate overlords. I hope you heard that. The always free Odyssey app, which is also where you can stream my radio show from 3 to 6 every single day on the Team 980. And also, I'm doing stuff here. A lot of our stuff is on YouTube now. A lot of the clips from the show, a lot of the clips from the podcast are there. So if you just search Craig Hoffman, and I think Abdul actually, back when I was in college, you could like get a custom URL way too easily on YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com/CHH223, it's a direct link to my channel. I can't change it anymore because they've updated, but that's how old I am. Is I got a custom one when they would just give anybody a custom URL.
Awesome, awesome. Well, guys, Craig's definitely the man. Make sure to go check out his stuff. And before we head out, please make sure to subscribe, like, and comment on this video. And follow us on all social media platforms: TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, DMVSportsZone. With that being said, I'm out. Hopefully, the Commanders win this week against Green Bay. It should be a winnable game, but nothing's winnable for this team for the past 30 years. So we're out. Peace.